I'm Carol Spieckerman, and this is Spieckerman Speaks Retail, presented by MarketScale. Hey everyone, it's Carol, and welcome to episode 9 of Spieckerman Speaks Retail. I help all kinds of retail-focused companies perfect a repeatable, scalable positioning process so you can land big B2B programs. And I also speak on my retail trajectories, which are themes that connect what's really happening across categories, borders, business models, and touch points, and what you can do about it. But right now, we're digging in on perfecting your retail positioning and accelerating business development, because I want to make sure that you're armed and dangerous going into that all-important fourth quarter and well into 2021. So we're on the third installment of 8 mistakes suppliers can't make, whether you sell products, services, or solutions, or whether you're trying to sell your capabilities to investors and other partners. But I want to thank all of you who have liked and shared the episodes and who've engaged with Spieckerman Speaks Retail. I really appreciate your feedback. And in fact, today is a direct response to the number one question that you guys are sending to me. And that is, how do you stay positive with all that's going on right now? So today's going to be a multifaceted answer to that question, wrapped in our third mistake. I talk about mega-hype in retail, when things are promoted to the hilt, even to the point of exaggeration. And you see it all the time with products and brands and increasingly services and solutions. I want to focus today on the opposite condition, which I call nega-hype. And that is focusing sometimes even irrationally on the negative things that are happening right now and letting it poison your attitude toward your business and at the end of the day, sabotage that business development and your retail positioning to the industry. And right now, nega-hype is becoming far more pervasive than mega-hype ever was in retail. So mistake number 3 is feeding the nega-hype machine. Today, we're going to talk about how feeding into all of this nega-hype and low expectations can kill your retail business, and in ways that may even be escaping your notice. And I'm also going to reveal a powerful alternative that can frame everything from your corporate positioning to your business development processes and get all of it moving in the right direction. But you don't need me to tell you that there is a lot of negativity out there right now, and retail is certainly no exception. In fact, doomsday prognosticating has been a staple of retail pundits for years, and there's some pretty good reasons for that. For one thing, the appetite for nega-hype is big and has been big because people fear rapid change, and sometimes it can just seem easier to feed into that than to risk having higher expectations. So it can feel a lot safer to just predict doom all the way around. And right now, it can even feel like a sure bet. But early in my career, I got some of the best advice I've ever received, and it was a total antidote to nega-hype. I was living on the West Coast. I was working with some of the most hard-nosed, jaded buyers ever to hit retail. Now, back then, I was on the wholesale side of the business, and I was working with West Coast department stores, which at the time were a really big deal for folks like me because they could really bring in the business. Now, this was before Walmart or Amazon were on everybody's radar. Walmart was actually considered risky business. People would say that they were a down market account that would kill your brand. And Amazon didn't even exist. I mean, how soon we forget, right? But those department stores were going through massive consolidation at the time, and it was freaking everybody out. Those doomsday predictions and that nega-hype were hitting a fevered pitch. Well, one night I was at an event and I was speaking to a CEO of a major retailer that was one of my customers. And we were talking about all the sky is falling stuff that was on the tip of everybody's tongue. And I asked if I should be concerned. And he said to me, Carol, no matter how bad it gets, somebody will always be buying and someone will always be selling what they're buying. And that might as well be you. That really hit me because up to that point, it had been me. I'd been doing really well in my sales career, and I just wanted to make sure it wasn't some kind of fluke and that I wasn't crazy for thinking that this role could continue. And for the most part, it wasn't a fluke. Over the years, I weathered all kinds of downturns, all kinds of doomsday prognosticating, and people saying, no, Carol, this is really different. It's really bad out there. I'm sharing this with you to draw an important distinction. I didn't keep booking business by ignoring reality or through Pollyanna positivity. I just remembered what Bob told me at that event. I knew that business was happening despite whatever disruption was going on at the time, and I would always ask the question, why not me? So why not you? A funny thing happens when you ask that question. A kind of healthy, no excuses entitlement starts to kick in. Now, that can feel really weird right now. Guilt can even creep in, thinking, who am I to feel okay when things are so not okay? And even survivor's guilt when you see competitors going out of business, you see colleagues losing their jobs. But this isn't an all or nothing zero-sum game that we're playing here, no matter who says otherwise. You can balance real concerns about macro conditions and about individual circumstances with aspirations for yourself and your business. In fact, you have to, or somebody else will. So, why not you? I've found that this one question transforms really big decisions. Decisions around corporate culture and positioning and how they present to the industry through their content and their presentations and so on. And ideally, it also changes the little things like day-to-day communication within your company and the communication that you're having with your prospects and your clients. But it changes all of it for the better, if for no other reason than most of your competitors are feeding into that Nega-hype right now, and they're probably doing it more than ever before. So let's take a look at some of the Nega-hype pitfalls that you might be buying into without even knowing it, and a powerful alternative principle that I've found makes all the difference across multiple scenarios. First of all, I see a lot of folks making a lot of negative assumptions, assuming that everyone's in trouble and panicking and going out of business. But here's the thing. Even if that were the case, recapping misery is never a good starting position for you, and it's a terrible way to start any discussion, even if your prospect or your customer goes there first. You're there to provide solutions and to draw your customers and prospects toward the light. Also, struggling companies can be great customers, so don't let the Nega-hype keep you from pursuing opportunities with companies that might be in trouble. You can help them. But let's talk about the fix, how to combat the Nega-hype. In my platform positioning workshops, I talk about the power of being positive assumptive. These two words are so powerful because they're as close to a foolproof filter as you'll find for your corporate positioning, your business development strategy, and your day-to-day communications. But essentially, positive assumptive framing means three things. You can think of them as three rules for combating the Nega-hype. Number one, assume positive outcomes until you're explicitly told otherwise. And we're going to drill down on this in a minute. Number two, make a positive approach your default rather than caving into the Nega-hype. And third, and this one's really important, be assumptive in the first place. Assumption is an active position. It's not a passive one. So you're actively assuming good actions, good intentions, and good outcomes rather than not making any assumptions at all. In other words, you'll stand out just by taking a stand. Now, some companies do this really well, and I especially like what IBM is doing. They're a great example that works in retail and across all kinds of other industries and verticals. They're a really diverse player, but they're also a really good example of proactively declaring a future-seeking, positive position and instilling confidence. But they're not ignoring reality. They're creating a positive assumptive narrative in light of reality. I thought I'd share just a few of their social media posts that get this point of view across. Here's one. Establishing a safe workplace is top of mind for every business. See how data and machine learning solutions can help businesses welcome employees back to work when the time is right. Here's another. We protect business, freeing you to thrive in the face of cyber uncertainty. And here's one more that actually pivots off one of their retailer relationships. Transformation in coronavirus. Here's how IBM helped Joann's stores pivot its supply chain to handle skyrocketing online orders during COVID-19. Do you see how they're balancing and linking a firm grasp on reality, but they're pairing it with solutions and action? Also, how they're focusing on positive aspects of the business, like the acceleration in online orders for a retail customer, making sure that you know that they can help take that to the next level. So they didn't start off with, hey, times are tough all over, or share what problems you're having. Instead, they're crafting a positive response and a vision for the future. And you immediately get this vibe that they have your back and that they can help. So another form of creeping Nega-hype that's passive and pervasive and that spins off of what we just talked about is assuming what somebody can or cannot afford. Assuming price resistance or even anticipating it can be really deadly, and it's very common. The Nega-hype on this one is when you hear, hey, nobody's spending right now, budgets are being cut or whatever, and then you start buying into it. But what I've found is that in most cases, people cave into pricing Nega-hype for two reasons: projection and protection. Projection because, hey, maybe you remember when another prospect or a client balked at your prices and you're projecting that onto your prospect. Or protection because if you expect price resistance, then maybe you won't be so bummed out when it actually happens. Now, I do entire modules, entire trainings just on price resistance and how to manage it. Here again, the alternative is about being positive assumptive. So instead of thinking, what will they pay? Think, what kind of impact can we have and how much is it worth? So when it comes to being positive assumptive with price, the assumption that you're making is that you provide value. But being positive assumptive requires consistency, a word of caution here, because the most perfectly crafted positive assumptive corporate messaging can get torpedoed by a single dissonant or negative email or conversation starter. In fact, my clients will tell you that I am a very big stickler on this. I encourage them not to even start emails with words like unfortunately, or to overuse words like can't or don't, or even try to eliminate them altogether. It's really fun at the end of the day when you start reworking your communications toward being positive assumptive. I see it all the time. Just when someone swears it can't be done and that there's some big, ugly exception, they figure it out. And then a big smile creeps up because they hear how much more effective everything sounds. Then it becomes a habit, and then the results start happening. Ta-da! That's the power of positive assumptive. In the last episode, I talked about the type of research that you should be doing on your prospects and customers, going over investor call transcripts, executive interviews for your prospects, and so on. We were talking about it in terms of uncovering the influencers and the decision makers that matter these days. That kind of research applies here as well, except in this case, you're looking for what's going well and areas where your prospects and customers feel like they have an opportunity. So what are those opportunities and how can you help them make the most of it? But also too, what are they struggling with and how can you spin it to be a positive outcome that you can make happen? Now, this is really different from the generic problem-based approaches that most of your competitors are employing right now. And that includes assuming problems that don't even exist, that old solution in search of a problem trap. All of your prospects and customers these days have completely unique strategies. It's no longer one size fits all. So you got to dig in and find out what their opportunities are specific to them and how you can make them happen. Now, in the first episode of the 8 Mistakes series, we also talked about the number one problem that a lot of suppliers have, and that is the slow no, when your business development process just drags on and on. That ties into what we're talking about here too, and it goes back to that first rule to assume positive outcomes until you're explicitly told otherwise. Rather than relying on wishful thinking or making negative assumptions, make your prospects and customers tell you outright where they stand. And don't be afraid of the answer, because it's much better to know. Have a plan for trying again and again, because as we've talked about before, the revolving door is constantly spinning at Retail HQ and elsewhere. Things change really rapidly these days. People change. So stay in the game. Let's recap all the takeaways on nixing the Nega-hype. First of all, Nega-hype is rampant, but you don't have to join the party. The more that you stay out of it, the more you'll stand out. Secondly, recognize all the many forms that Nega-hype takes and don't make any excuses for it. Everything from problem-based positioning to caving in on price to negative communications with your customers and prospects. And remember, ask yourself, why not me? Know that it makes sense to hold things a little bit closer to the vest. Everybody doesn't need to know what you're up to. Everybody doesn't need to give an opinion. Sometimes you have to shield yourself from those Nega-hypers in order to maintain your momentum and even sometimes your sanity. And remember that the antidote to Nega-hype is to be positive assumptive and that it parlays across all your positioning and business development. I just love it when companies get results from reprogramming to positive assumptive positioning. And I hope that you're feeling better about nixing the Nega-hype and crafting a positive assumptive plan, because it's never been more relevant and it's never been more contrarian in a good way. Thank you for listening in today. If you have any questions or ideas or stories to share, ping me directly at carol@spieckermanretail.com or hit my site at spieckermanretail.com to check out more insights, subscribe to my updates, and get the latest on events and other happenings. And you can also follow me on Twitter at RetailExpert, XPERT. See you next time, and happy selling.